And we are truly blessed to have our next presenter, John Boswell Cobb Jr., born on the 9th of February, 1925, is an American theologian, philosopher, and environmentalist. Now, if you're good at maths, or even if you're not, you might have just figured out that John had his 99th birthday on Friday. John is regarded as one of the preeminent scholar in the field of process philosophy and process theology, the school of thought associated with the philosophy of Alfred North Whitehead. Cobb is the author of more than 50 books. You know, I'm going to cut the rest of your esteemed bio short, John, because I don't want to take up any of your time. We just want to hear from you. We're so honored, delighted, and moved to have you with us today. Happy birthday for Friday. Many happy returns. And thank you for being with us at the symposium dedicated to humanity's sacred mission and your work, bridging between East and West, China and the United States. The work of process thinking and process theology, process philosophy is so a powerful force for us as we consider the theme today.
I think before I start my talk, I should just say I was very touched by what we were just hearing. My earliest memories are of Hiroshima. I was born in Kobe, so that the places you will be visiting are familiar to me. And probably growing up in Japan has had some permanent effect. I think it always, whatever our experience is, has some effect on us. But at the level of governments, I'm not encouraged by what is happening today. But another level may be even more important. Governments, whether formally democratic or not, are influenced by public opinion. They are especially interested in public opinion that expresses itself in action. At that level of organization and activity, much is happening. Many individuals and many communities want to improve chances of a living earth. No two people or organizations have just the same challenges and opportunities, but directly or indirectly, we are all called to save our home, the planet, the earth, from the self-destruction to which so much human action seems directed. It seems that we have taught ourselves to think that having more goods and more money is the measure of success. We are called to liberate ourselves and one another from thinking that economic wealth is the most important measure of well-being. The many goods with which this planet can supply us on a sustainable basis are of great importance because they can enable us to live rewarding lives of mutual service through keeping the earth healthy. I think of ordering our lives for that purpose as earthism, that is, putting the service of the earth first, so that to think whether you are ready to put the health of the planet ahead of our private wealth or even our national wealth. If we will all do that, it is not too late. I call everyone to be an earthist. But concretely, just what that will mean will differ greatly. I will share what it has meant to me and now means for me. When I ask what about my personal past is most relevant to my decisions, I note that I am part of a small minority who are of European ancestry, but more oriented to Asia. My parents felt called to live and work in East Asia. They thought that would be China. My mother had gone to college with the Soong sisters and was a good friend of the one who married Sun Yat-sen. But China was not open to American teachers in the years right after World War I, and my parents went to Japan instead. Madame Sun Yat-sen visited my mother in Kobe in 1924. My mother was pregnant with me, so I claim almost to have met her. In some vague way, it contributes to my sense of feeling called to orient my efforts around the relation of China and the United States. My understanding of the natural world is that we understand it better when we think of organisms rather than mechanisms. The process thought with which I have tried to replace mechanistic thinking expresses that. It also connects me more with the thinking of the Far East. China's success seemed to be threatening the American goal to dominate the world. More of the American political leadership decided that China was America's greatest enemy. My view was that the only hope for the future of humanity was cooperation between the two most powerful nations in developing a future of peace and shared efforts to preserve the living earth. I was appalled that the American press more and more depicted Russia and its leaders as evil, apparently preparing us for that most appalling of all possible wars, the one between the world's two great nuclear powers. In my personal reflection about what I am called to do, I saw that thousands of people know more about what we are doing in Ukraine and Israel than I, but that I might give some leadership with respect to China. Our process community had been welcome there, and Zhe Wang could guide us. Our preference for organic thinking tended to be well received there. So we have thought that the calling to which most of us should respond as a group and as individuals is to focus on China-US relations. We knew that American propaganda was directed to generating enmity and justifying actions harmful to China. We did not think that falsification of reality in an opposite direction would help, but that if we could make available to those who are open factual accounts, the dangerous consequences of hostile propaganda might be weakened. Perhaps more Americans would see that cooperation with China is possible and would be fruitful. I'm a great admirer of an ancient Jew named Jesus. One of his least followed teachings was that we should love our enemies. Perhaps, if in a culture much of which celebrates Jesus, we could lift up the reality that loving our enemies is in fact our only hope, we can make a real contribution to the future. We are hoping that enough Americans understand the dangers of hostile and misleading propaganda sufficiently that the increasing availability of more accurate information could reduce the danger of war. We organized the Living Earth movement. Our ultimate goal would be to base international policies in general on more objective information combined with the continuing love of those so much propaganda unjustifiably vilifies. We believe that we are called to begin with China, and we give the American depiction of China a really critical examination that can be widely available. Bonnie Talwater has shown us how small groups of American citizens can strengthen one another in their personal commitment to Earthism and the peace that expresses it. We call these groups Earth Crisis Support Groups. You can learn how to organize them. Thousands of such groups could be organized fairly quickly, and we have already had enough experience to be confident of a positive result. The availability of accurate information and intimate groups seeking to become wise peacemakers need to be accompanied by serious, excuse me, the availability of accurate information and the intimate groups seeking to become peacemakers need to be accompanied by serious efforts of the two most powerful nations to depict a world in which life in general and human life in particular could flourish. We call this ecological civilization. If governments will lead, fine, but failing that, we need to organize all kinds of citizens groups that shift the conversation from how bad the other people are to what can be done cooperatively to ensure a livable planet. Some of this is going on. Another activity we are promoting and recommend to others for such promotion are youth dialogues. These we call sharing from the heart. What needs to be shared are all manner of experiences, especially those youth are now having as they awaken to the dangers their elders have bequeathed them. Of course, many young people do talk with other young people, but both the number of conversation groups and their ability to bring out the deeper levels of anxiety and distress need careful preparation. I hope you can understand both that and why we are beginning with the relations between the United States and China. And also, we think similar programs and activities can be developed elsewhere. We think that if the United States and China continue to focus on military activities and ways of destroying each other, the living Earth may be unimaginably damaged. We judge that others are called to organize to end war in Ukraine and Israel. At the moment, this seems even more urgent than improving the situation with China. If that is your calling, the fact that mine focuses on China should not in any way reduce the sense of importance to action on all these fronts. We are allies in the service of the earth and in its reorganization in terms of ecological civilization. If we find patterns of action in Israel that could help us in China, hopefully we will enthusiastically learn from one another. My intention is not to advise you or anybody about their specific calling may be. We can share our experiments in hopes that they may be copied successfully or stimulate thinking about what might work well in relation to China. We may develop programs that work well in many places. Let us compete in our service of the earth. Competition has a role in stimulating new ideas and practices. In the world of sports, at times, competition gets out of hand. But for the most part, we can compete without turning opponents into enemies. Humans have overall developed commitments to sportsmanship that can maintain respect for those with whom we compete. Perhaps we can propose alternative ways of reducing global warming and compete among them. Since it is clear that human beings enjoy competing, it will be far better to draw those aspects of human nature into the larger commitment to Earthism rather than allow it to become an enemy. But because treating some of the others that make up the world as enemies, we will be wise to recognize that enmity exists. Once we identify it, we can call for loving our enemies. We can begin by truly seeking to learn and act on the truth, but also caring for the human beings who are doing truly vicious things. If we love our enemies, enemies will be greatly reduced. But we will not give up the effort to love them while they remain enemies.
Thank you so much, John Cobb. That is really at the heart of it, perhaps the most simple and profound reality, that until we learn to love our enemies, we're not going to make it to peace on earth, and let alone peace with the earth. And if you look at the report card right now, you'd have to say, we ain't doing that great when it comes to loving our enemies. So thank you. And I think this is something we can all bring home. We not just point to this group and that group and say they have to do better, but to really bring it home to how well are we loving our enemies. Thank you for that beautiful message and wisdom, and for your life of service and thought leadership on this planet. John Cobb, is just an honor and a privilege and a joy to have you here as part of this symposium. Thank you to Charles Betterton, and thank you to all the support that has been able to bring you here today. I think it's Nathan who's there with you, and thank you to Nathan who's been able to get you online so that hundreds and through the time thousands can benefit from your wisdom. Thank you, John. Thank you.